Welcome to Five Friday Feedback. This is our viewer mailbag section of Friday's podcast. This is where we get a letter in and we give our advice on said letter. That, or sometimes it's a letter of celebration. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Today's header is how I paid off $20,000 in debt and raised my credit score from the 450s to the 720s in just 12 months. How about that?
450s? Damn, that you have to try to get down that low.
Indeed, indeed. Howdy, Fi guys. I'll be honest. Finding myself in over $20,000 worth of debt, I felt like drowning. I had balances spread across multiple credit cards, collections looming, and a credit score that was plummeting into the 450s. Every time I checked my credit score, it was a reminder of how deep in the hole I was. I'd been falling behind on my payments for months, 30, sometimes even 60 days late, and the minimum payments were barely scratching the surface. But now, just 1 year later, just 1 year, I raised my credit score into the 720s. I got rid of all of my collections, and I paid off every single credit card I had, and here's how I did it. I love that. Looks like this is a triumph story. I love hearing that.
Cool. I always like the triumph ones because I don't have to give any advice. At the end of it, it's just like, good job. So that's cool with me.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the nitty gritty details. So far, the total was 4 credit cards, right? And 1 in collections. To give you an idea of where I started, here's my balances at the beginning of my journey, with the numbers rounded for simplicity. Credit card number 1, a whopping $12,000. Credit card number 2, $1,800. Credit card number 3, $2,600. Credit card number 4, $2,800, and $2,800 in collections. And not to mention that credit card number 1 was actually maxed out and over the limit by about $1,000, which I'm not really sure how that happens. How does that happen?
So my guess, if it's over by $1,000, is that they spent $1,000 while other payments were still pending. So they did it like really, really quickly. And then it went over before the pending balance actually posted to the card.
Okay. Okay. A bit of bad luck, windfalls, and lower expenses. So I was fortunate enough to receive help along the way. My family gifted me, keyword gifted, $3,000, which gave me some much needed jumpstart to get back to where I needed to be. Also, after waiting for about 2 years, I finally received a $5,000 refund from the IRS with interest, I might add. I originally thought that I would never see that money. Fair. It's honestly fair. I don't think I would have thought I would see that money ever again either. Beyond that, I reduced my living expenses by moving in with my boyfriend. Congratulations. Lower rent meant that I had a little bit more breathing room to focus on my debt repayment. Congratulations on moving in with your boyfriend. We were
That's
wondering
a hard choice to make.
Yeah, that is. I mean, depending on the boyfriend, it could be a hard choice or an easy choice.
Yeah, but it's always harder to most people, whenever they're in debt, they're like, okay, if it's the equation is I need to make more money or spend less money, everyone just goes, or I'll just make more money. Like that's the society we live in. But no one ever like looks on this side of the ledger of like, oh, I can also reduce how much I spend in order to throw more money at the debt.
Yeah.
Because you have 2 levers to pull from and everyone only pulls on 1 lever. So good for you for seeing that through.
The first thing I did with the first $8,000 was to get current on all my overdue accounts. That's smart. I can't even describe the weight that was lifted off my shoulders after being caught up. I used the remainder of the windfall to pay off my credit card number 4 and make a dent in credit card number 1. Remember, 1 is the biggest one, right? With that, I stopped using all of my credit cards altogether. That's smart. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Needed.
Yeah, needed. So it looks like she used the snowball method next, right? Tackling debt 1 credit card at a time. Once I was caught up, I adopted the snowball method. I started small and focused on credit cards with the lowest balance to build momentum. And here's how it went. I budgeted carefully, setting aside $600 from each paycheck for living expenses, groceries, car insurance, subscriptions, only the essentials, right? And some fun money. I love how it says only the essentials and then it goes, and some fun money. It's like, okay, I don't know. I understand.
You got to keep a little bit in there. You can't just be a robot for who knows how long it takes.
True. This helped me stay disciplined, but not feel completely deprived. That is smart.
There it
Right?
is.
We're trying to have a plan for longevity, not the quickest plan to help me get out of the situation. It's like, no, let's get the plan that actually works for you and your situation. I took the remaining $1,000 I had left over from each paycheck and had it split between my credit card minimum payments and extra payments on the smallest balances first. Cool beans.
Perfect.
Yeah. I quickly paid off credit card number 2. That was the one that was $1,800, right? I quickly paid off credit card number 2, then moved on to credit card number 3. Knocking out these smaller balances was key to keep the momentum going and the motivation high. Felt like progress. Smart. But the biggest hurdle, the beast, credit card number 1. Come on down. Credit card number 1, my largest debt, was the most intimidating of them all. With such a high balance, I knew I needed much more than income if I was ever going to pay it off in a reasonable amount of time. I started picking up side gigs, everything from Uber Eats deliveries to online tutoring. Wonderful. Everything I landed, and eventually I landed a freelance contract that added an extra $200 to $300 a week. That is amazing. That is really awesome. That's super cool. It's almost, that's $800 a month. That's really good. That's a sizable portion. I made sure to set aside 20% for taxes. Smart. But the rest went straight to credit card 1. I made payments every week, reducing my balance bit by bit. And most importantly, reducing the interest charges along the way. Smart. I also used credit card 1 to pay off my collections debt before it got reported to the credit bureaus, which helped my credit score dramatically.
Okay, nice.
Okay. The lessons I learned from this and moving forward was I was far away. It was far from easy, but the relief I now feel is worth every bit of sacrifice. I stopped eating out. I kept my spending in check, and I stayed consistent with my side gigs. Now that my credit cards are paid off, and my next challenge is taking on my car loan. But I've learned my lesson when it comes to debt. Looking back, I'm grateful for the windfall that helped me start all of this. And I'm proud of the discipline I built along the way. If you're in a similar situation, know that it's possible to turn things around one small step at a time. Cheers to never getting into debt again. With a budget tight and no more debt in sight, I'm living proof it's worth the fight. Interesting. Congratulations, first off.
Yeah, congratulations. 1,000%. Like that's an astonishing accomplishment for most people. And this young lady should be really proud of the discipline and the hard work she put in.
Yeah.
Because you don't get out of credit card debt accidentally.
No, you really don't. You really don't. I mean, how much it was around $22,000 in debt, right?
Quick math, yeah, about that.
About that, yeah. Just in my head, definitely not ChatGPT or nothing like that. So 22,000, that's a good amount, right? That's a sizable amount that can grow rather quickly. Big shout out to you. I think you're really taking what you learned from the podcast and doing something with it. I love that. I love that we're not just entertainment. We're actually providing value and information that's actionable for your life. One thing I will point out that has me just a bit concerned, just a tiny bit concerned, is the final line, right? Cheers to never getting into debt again. And I totally get that. You've been down that road, you never want to do it again, right? I totally get that. Totally get that. But I would also caution against that, right? Not all debt is bad debt. Just the debt you were in was bad debt. You wanted to get a house one day. I don't want that to stress you out or feel like you have to save your way into a house. What do you think about that, Chris? What do you think that final line?
I guess I would have to ask them, like, what do they mean by debt? If do they mean consumer debt, like credit card debt? Yeah, 100% agree with it. There's never good credit card debt. But if it's something like that, like, hey, I'm not going to, like, I want to go back to school, but I don't have the money to do it. I'm not going to take out debt because at one point in my life, I was this deep in credit card debt. I'm never going to let that happen again. That probably wouldn't be the wisest decision. If it's a decision like I can't buy a house until I've saved up all of the money to buy the house, not a wise decision. So just understand that debt is just a tool. And credit card debt, Yeah, that's oftentimes I can't think of, honestly, I can't think of a time where it's not a bad tool, but that's one of those tools that can really, really hurt you. It's like playing with a loaded gun. But sometimes when you're having debt for maybe buying a house or buying something that, you know, ideally will bring more money into your pocket in the long term, yeah, it's like playing with a BB gun. Like it's still dangerous, but not as dangerous. So I want you to understand the difference between these tools. One other thing that I noticed is it sounded like it took a while for you to realize how bad the situation was. And the nice thing is, not that you've gone through this situation, you've seen how bad things can get, and unfortunately how quickly it can get there. I don't think you're ever going to find yourself in that situation again. But I want you to always make sure that you're being cautious, and especially to our listeners as well. Not just to our writer, that they're really coming through life with intention and being mindful of these things, because $20,000 and taking your credit score to a 450 can happen really, really quickly if you're not paying attention. And thankfully, this young lady, I don't know what the catalyst was for her to notice, like, oh shit, like this is getting really, really bad. But I'm glad that whatever it was happened and that money happened to come in. And let's think about all the blessings she had. Her family gave her $3,000. The IRS owed her $5,000. So I'm going to say you got $5,000 that should have been yours. So good, that's great. But also, like, let's look at all the gifts you had. $3,000 from your family, the ability to move in with your boyfriend to lower rent. So many people like to say, like, oh, I work so hard and like I got no advantages. We all have advantages. There are no self-made men. There are no self-made women in this world, because if you're alive today, it's because someone took care of you. Someone took care of you from the years 1 to 4, at least. After that, yeah, you might have had the hardest life in the world where you had to take care of yourself. But no one is self-made, because everyone has someone who took care of them at some point. So please just like remember all the advantages that every single one of us has every day. If you're listening to this podcast, you are in the top 1% of the world in human history. Just have access to all of the knowledge at your fingertips. Yes, the world is awful in a lot of ways, but it's also beautiful and amazing in so many ways. And you can get out of any situation you find yourself in. Look at our listener here. They went ahead and they pulled on both levers. They went out and they reduced their expenses. Not an easy choice to make. It's really hard to maybe sell whatever. Maybe she was living on her own place, to move in with her boyfriend, to cut out all of the fun stuff. And then she took an even harder decision to go out and not only work her normal job, but take on side gigs, driving Uber. And eventually that led on to a freelance gig that's going to bring her more money, therefore pursuing or speeding up her path to financial independence, her path to getting good with money. All of these things, while in the moment may have been the worst thing that ever happened to her, is now setting her up to be the best thing that ever happened to her. So while you're in these moments, for any of our listeners who are saying like, this is awful, I'm never going to get out of it, think about yourself in 20 or 30 years. If you stick to this path, looking back on yourself now and being like, thank goodness that person had to go through this so that I could be the person that I am today. So work to become the person you want to become every single day, no matter how hard it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. 100%. Like Chris said, we're all blessed with different things that maybe we don't realize, right? And your discipline is to be celebrated. That's definitely to be celebrated. It's not easy getting out of debt. It's not easy cutting back. It's not easy going from, no, everything should move forward. Let's move forward. Let's keep going. Let's grow, grow, grow. It's like, no, we got to take a step back sometimes and really see where we're at and see how we can improve. And I'm glad you got to it before it was even further down the road, and make sure not to procrastinate any of the financial stuff later on, right? I know sometimes it can be scary looking at your bank account, right? But it's something that as an adult, we got to do so that it doesn't get out of control. We got to be brave for ourselves and our future self and the people who rely on us. So with that being said, best of luck, congratulations, and you did very well.
Yeah. Keep up the good work and let us know how it continues on.
Absolutely.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.